Monsieur le Président, Mesdames et Messieurs les députés, aussi mes collègues députés européens, Monsieur le Secrétaire Général, chers collègues, ladies and gentlemen, modern Europe owes so much to Luxembourg, from lessons learned from an economic union between Belgium and Luxembourg in 1921, through to the Luxembourg Compromise in 1966 to resolve the empty chair crisis, which had caused a stalemate within the European Economic Community. From hosting the European Parliament's first own hemicycle in 1973, through to organizing the first conference of national parliament presidents in 1981. From the adoption in Luxembourg of the 1975 Petain report that paved the way to direct elections for the European Parliament, through to lifting border restrictions. Luxembourg has always played a leading part in championing European integration and European democracy. And today, Luxembourg still plays a fundamental leading part in knowledge sharing on integration and on compromise finding in our European Union. And for this, I wanted to start by saying, as President of the European Parliament, I thank you. The European Parliament places a great emphasis on cooperation between parliamentarians, both within the European Union and internationally. And this is why our meeting today is so important. National parliaments within the European Union have an institutional role in the consultation on European Union legislation, but there is also so much more possibilities for exchanges and debates and cooperation between parliaments such as yours and the European Parliament. I give you a few examples. This week, the European Parliamentary Week is taking place in the European Parliament in Brussels, and this has brought both MEPs and national members across the EU together to discuss the European semester. Last Friday, the 4th of March, I organized a meeting between the Speaker of the Ukrainian Parliament, the Verkhovna Rada, and representatives of all EU national parliaments, in which the Vice Speaker of this Chamber of Deputies, Ms. Juna Bernard, took part. I would like to build on such exchanges. These are more than just useful, they are proof of what a vibrant democracy looks like and how a vibrant democracy should work. And I would like to continue to hold these kind of meetings so that we can rapidly respond, as we did with the Verkhovna Rada, to sensitive and evolving situations. Si aujourd'hui la paix et la fraternité entre nos peuples de l'Union européenne sont assurées, nous le devons pour une grande part à un homme des frontières, Robert Schuman. Né en 1886 à Clausen, ici tout près de Kirchberg, ce luxembourgeois né, ce grand européen, nous le reconnaissons comme l'un des pères fondateurs de notre projet européen pacifique. But I ask you, what would Robert Schuman think about Europe today? It is now 20 days since Putin's Russia has invaded Ukraine. Shelling continues. Ukrainians who never trained before are being trained to fight, are taking up arms, and millions have been forced to flee. So today, what we have in Europe is that Europeans are experiencing crimes of war. A month ago, a little bit more, I would have told you I know little about the Ukrainian town of Mariupol. Now, it is the name of a town that we will never forget. The recent Russian bombs on Mariupol have left many of its residents, if not dead, in atrocious conditions, without water, power, or heating. And while the shelling of a maternity ward and children's hospital is an act of pure evil, that ultimately sums up the nature of the threat that we face today. We thought ourselves secure in peace, but Putin's invasion of Ukraine has shattered peace in Europe, something that we would have thought unimaginable. It has changed everything as we know it. And our response must be proportionate to the serious, real, and growing threat to our collective security. Au lendemain de la Seconde Guerre mondiale, alors que l'Europe sort d'une crise épouvantable, Robert Schuman propose que les Européens construisent un dialogue entre les peuples. Au sortir d'une crise, il propose qu'on unisse. That's what we did then, and this is what we are doing today. We are pulling out of a terrible crisis, the COVID pandemic, and yet in spite of this, we have found strength and we have found unity. And we stand united as a European Union built out of dialogue between people rooted in common values and built on democracy. Last month's Eurobarometer figures again feature top scores for Luxembourg when it comes to believing in the European Union. You and your citizens believe in Europe. But let us pause to reflect on the fact that the actions that we have led in the past 20 days, our massive, unprecedented economic sanctions, our provision of military equipment to Ukraine, our rallying together, our welcoming of those who are fleeing tanks. We have done them not just for ourselves, not out of conceit for our project. We have done them because we also stand united with Ukrainian people. And we also stand united with people in Russia who have come down to the streets in spite of threats, in spite of aggression and repression, to voice their opposition to a war that will ruin. And we count on those individuals too. They are also on the right side of history, because they are the ones that can make a difference to how this world might develop. In 1950, Robert Schuman boldly suggested that Europeans should bring their dearest resources together under one community. At the time, it was coal and steel. In 2022, as we seek to reduce our resource dependency on the Kremlin, what bold solutions can we find for resources that we hold dear today, namely gas, or coal, and oil? One thing we know for sure, and time is running out for this assessment, is that we must reassess, as Europe, our role in a new world. Europe managed, after the crisis of World War II, to pool together a coal and steel community. And in fact, this year, we mark 70 years since the European Coal and Steel Community established its initial institutions here, including the European Parliament, in Luxembourg. It was a stepping stone towards the European Union of today. Our Europe knows no big and no small states. I can never repeat this enough. We are only as big as our ideas. Then that is the beauty of our project. Now we will soon conclude on our conference on the future of Europe. And this experiment in participatory democracy needs to be taken seriously. But beyond parliamentary democracy, it is an opportunity to listen to our citizens, in particular of Europe's younger generation being heard. It will be our institutional responsibility to jointly translate the proposals made into concrete action, while also taking into account the European Union's renewed impetus for unity in the face of aggression against our values of democracy. Because we are at a time when Europe needs to show resolve and ambition. Luxembourg, like all member states, must play a key role in our response to the invasion of Ukraine. We did not choose this war, nor did we provoke this invasion, but how we react now to defend our European values is decisive. Firstly, Europe needs to reduce its dependency on the Kremlin for its energy needs. It is simply unacceptable for Europe to indirectly fund the bombs that are raining down on Ukraine. And our future must be towards a future of zero gas from Russia. It is ambitious, but it is necessary. And that means massively reinvesting in renewables and diversifying our energy supplies. It means that Europe needs to find its Schuman spirit again, to come together like never before. Secondly, we need to boost our investment in defense and in innovative technologies and continue to build a real security and defense union. And here we must again look at our common EU budget to see where improvements can be made, because the threat that we face is real and we must step up our response. Thirdly, we need to talk more about food security. This must become part and parcel of our discussions on Europe's strategic autonomy. Our supply lines must be more solid, our farmers must need more support, and they must be more incentivized. Fourthly, what we have seen so far in terms of European coordination, solidarity and unity is unprecedented, and this must be the blueprint for us going forward. Member states have led the efforts to welcome more than 2 million Ukrainians into our families and into our communities. I know also you have welcomed already 2,500 Ukrainians, and you are playing your part. Your homes and also your hearts have been opened to people fleeing war in Europe. We have matched massive sanctions with practical solidarity that really allowed Ukrainians straight into our homes. And we can really say that the best of Europe is on display right at the very moment. Ultimately, Ukraine will define our European future. It will impact the decisions that we take, and it will be a turning point. The Europe we know has survived and has adapted to crises. We have grown closer. We have grown more interconnected, and nothing better than this encapsulates our own approach to freedom of movement. This is the last point I'd like to make, related to Luxembourg. Freedom of movement in the Schengen area is resolutely an acquis. And Schengen is part of our vernacular speech. I was just walking on the way here and I met somebody in the street who called me out. I went to school, to the Collège d'Europe with Christoph Schiltz, who just passed in the street. And the first word that reminds me of Christoph is Schengen. I remember discussing with him and learning this when we were students, the impact of decisions that are taken and that were taken in this country. And again, it was from Luxembourg that we learned the value of openness and trust in one another. Speaking of trust, today, 21% of the European Parliament staff works in Luxembourg. We have invested massively in a real estate project to upgrade and modernize our Luxembourg staff's offices in the form of the Konrad Adenauer 2 building complex. It was for this reason that I wanted my first official state visit to be in Luxembourg since I got elected President of the European Parliament, because I know how important you and this country is for the European project. And for all this, I want to thank you for allowing all this to happen and for your continued welcome in your Grand Duchy. Villemont merci.